In this lesson, we'll go over the structure and syntax of a form and the many elements that populate it. We can think of the internet as a network of computers which send and receive information. Computers need an HTTP request to know how to communicate. The HTTP request instructs the receiving computer how to handle the incoming information. More information can be found in our article about HTTP requests. The form element is a great tool for collecting information, but then we need to send that information somewhere else for processing. We need to supply the form element with both the location of where the form's information goes and what HTTP request to make. Take a look at the sample form below. In the above example, we've created the skeleton for form that will send information to example.html as a post request. The action attribute determines whether the information is sent. The method attribute is assigned a HTTP verb that is included in the HTTP request. Note, HTTP verbs like post do not need to be capitalized for the request to work, but it's done so out of convention. In the example above, we could have written method equals quotations post, and it would still work. The form element can also contain child elements. For instance, it would be helpful to provide a header so that users know what this form is about. We could also add a paragraph to provide even more detail. Let's see an example of this in code. So the header is there, and then the paragraph. And naturally the header's font is bigger than the paragraph, but you can go into CSS and style it to whatever font size you would like. The example above does not collect any user input, but we'll do that in the next exercise. For now, let's practice making the foundation of an HTML form. So, in this section element, add a form element under the provided comment. Assign the form with an action attribute with the value of, and a method attribute with the value of. So, here's our section element, open and close. So we'll add a form element. And in that we will assign a method attribute with the value of post. Make sure you're writing your code between the opening and closing tags of the body. To create a form, provide both an opening and closing form tag. In the opening form tag, add the attribute of action. Okay, so same opening form tag, add an attribute of method and assign it a value of post. Right now we have a blank form on a burger site. Let's add some context. Add an H1 inside the form element with text related to the site between the opening and closing H1 tags. Oh, oops. I put it below the form. I need this H1 inside the form. Copy, delete. I'll paste that right there. Okay, add some detail to the form by inserting a paragraph element below the header 1 element. Write a relevant description with the P element. If we want to create an input field in our form, we'll need the help of the input element. The input element has a type attribute which determines how it renders on the web page and what kind of data it can accept. The first value of the type attribute we're going to explore is text. When we create an input element with type equals text, it renders a text field that users can type into. It's also important that we include a name attribute for the input. Without the name attribute, information in the input won't be sent when the form is submitted. We'll explain more about submissions and the submit button in a later exercise. For now, let's examine the following code that produces a text input field. So you create the form action example.html method post. So they're posting something. So they type the text, and then the name is the first text within the field there. So here's a screenshot of how the rendered form looks like on a web page of the Chrome browser. Different browsers have different default rendering. When initially loaded, it will be an empty box. So you can add placeholder text if you want. After users type into the input element, the value of the value attribute becomes what is typed into the text field. The value of the value attribute is paired with the value of the name attribute and sent as text when the form is submitted. For instance, a user typed in important details in the text field created by our input element. When the form is submitted, the text first text field important details is sent to example.html because the value of the name attribute is, and the value of value is important details. Okay, we could also assign a default value for the value attribute so that users have a pre-filled text when they first see the rendered form like so. So that's like a placeholder text. Okay, let's start with creating a login for our users. Inside the provided form element, add an input element with a type attribute of text. Attribute text. Even though we're not submitting the form, let's develop some good habits by giving the input a name attribute with the value of username. Let's see what happens if we add a value attribute with a value of Davy.